Hey BookTube, it's Jackie. How's it going? If you're new to me, it's the first time you're seeing my face. Hello, what's up? My name's Jackie. I sit on my floor and I talk about books. So I hope it's why you're here because that's what's going to be happening today. If you're not new to me, thank you for always tuning in, the continued support. I really do appreciate it. So as you can see from today's title of video, I have another book review for you, and this is all on Ella Jacobs and His Cage, and it looks like this. I am super pumped to talk about this. Ella Jacobs is one of those authors that I have been following since she started. I've actually reviewed every single book she's written, and so I was really excited to be put on the ARC team for this one. So without further ado, grab yourself a drink, have yourself a seat, and let's get talking about what happens when you're in his cage. Okay. I'm so excited. I have been waiting for this one to come out. I have been teased to within an inch of my life with all the teasers on this, and I finally got it in my hands, and holy shit. Ella, girl, yeah, for starters, okay, this is the, this is the first installment to a new series of hers that has nothing to do with her previous series. So I'm going to try very hard to not try to compare and contrast the two series because they are polar opposites, guys. I mean, we do have some common themes, but just the caliber in this book is just next fucking level. It's insane. So without further ado, let's get down into it. Here are some stats. So this is, like I said, the first installment to a new series. It is loosely now titled Russian Alpha Series, Book 1. You can read this as a standalone. We do have an HEA in it. And as of right now, there are plans to do possibly more books in the series, but she does not know when she will be doing that. So this right now is a standalone, but it is in the works of possibly being a series. Like I said, we do have an HEA, and this is a captor-captive romance. Yes. I gotta love a good captor-captive romance. We also feature a Russian billionaire, and just like all of Ella Jacobs' work, this is a BDSM romance, and in this one we have an emphasis in the dominant submissive behavior element. So definitely a lifestyle component, not so much sexual practices. Going back to that lifestyle component that she definitely impressed me with her other works, so we're going back to that in this one, and I'm super stoked about it. We do have some BDSM practices, though, in here. We see pet play. Yes, you heard me correctly. You heard me correctly. We have pet play. We have caging. Obviously, look at the title. We have whipping, shackling, and collaring. We also feature a lot of sadistic and masochistic behaviors, as well as the degrading kink, heavily featured, praise kink, heavily featured, humiliation, kidnapping, and we do have some triggers for gaslighting, drugging, non-con, coerced consent, dubious consent, panic and anxiety attacks, Stockholm syndrome, and extreme graphic content and situations. Just to name a few. Yeah, she packed a fucking punch with this book. She was not holding back anything in this book. Absolutely nothing. And if she is, I'm scared. I'm scared. If she's still holding back, holy shit. Watch yourselves, and make sure everything's charged appropriately because you're gonna need it, okay? Before we get into the actual nitty-gritty of the review, I do have some definition to go over because I did rattle off a lot of things, and since this is a BDSM romance, and if you're not familiar with BDSM, a lot of these terminologies are really heavily focused and practiced within the BDSM community, so I like to go over them so there's no misinformation or anything like that. Ella does a really good job of giving you a good idea what majority of these things are, kind of doesn't break it down explaining it, but within the context of the book, you get a very good idea of it. But before we get into it, because I'm not going to be breaking it down like she did, I'm just giving you the base definition so you at least have an idea of what I'm talking about when I use these terms. I like to make sure that there's no misinformation, especially about this community, because a lot of people don't understand this community because they only think of a very few certain aspects, and there's a lot of levels to this community and lifestyle, and Ella does a great job of showing many of those facets in her books. And so I want to do her justice and make sure that you guys are properly informed. So, first definition, BDSM. BDSM actually stands for bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, and sadomasochism. Bondage is the part that is the restricting of partners' freedom and movement with ropes, handcuffs, and other restraint types. So that's the common stereotypical idea when you think of BDSM, the whips, the chains, the spankings, all of that kind of jazz. But the bondage is actually the physical restraining of a person's body. The discipline is the agreed upon rules and punishment for a dominant partner to exert control over a submissive partner. We do see this focused in this book as well, along with dominance. Dominance is the act of showing dominance over a physical partner, either during sex or outside the bedroom. We see it both in this book, but heavily outside the bedroom. For as fun as this book is, there is a lot of outside the bedroom activities that feature this dominance element, and it is heavily displayed in it. So I want you to make sure you guys understood what that meant. And submission, on the other side of the scope, is the act of showing submission to a dominant partner's actions or wishes. Again, another thing that's highlighted in this book heavily, outside the bedroom. We do see dominance and submission within the bedroom scope, but mostly it is the lifestyle component, this dominance and submissive, along with the discipline and the rules to follow. Heavily portrayed in this book. And then we also have sadomasochism, which is the pleasure of sexual gratification that a partner may feel from inflicting pain, that's the sadist side, or receiving pain, which is the masochistic side. It's either physical or emotional. And we see this heavily played out. Because of some of the kinks and plays that are used within this book, they tend to fall under the sadist masochistic kind of umbrella of the BDSM community. So this is definitely a big one as well. So dominance, submission, sadomasochism, heavily prevalent in this book. So this is something that you're looking for. These are things that you were into. These are things you understand or you want to experience. Here you go. Here's one that's blatant in your face. All right. I also mentioned the idea of pet play. This is one I don't see a lot in books. And this is not a true pet play, as in our character is not taking the role of an animal, but they are doing similar practices within a pet play component. So I wanted to describe it. Pet play is the fetish activity in which one participant takes the role of a pet animal or other. In this instance, we have our submissive being treated as a pet. Legitimately, that's the word that's used. Okay? Yes, so we definitely have this prevalent within the story, but it's not a true pet pain component. Like, she's not wearing a muzzle, she's not barking like a dog, none of that. But we do have caging, which is part of kind of the pet play component, along with rules and regulations, being trained, kneeling at their feet where his dogs are, things of that nature. So a lot of parallel components to this. So I want to make sure you're aware of that one. I mentioned caging. Caging is a cage fetish is referring to the sexual desire rooted in seeing or fantasizing about men or women caged in human cages. And literally the title of this book is In His Cage. So there's a fucking cage. And it's gorgeous. And it is a star in this book. Straight up, it's its own fucking character. Okay? Very prevalent, very heavily used. If you were looking for this kind of specific concept in your BDSM romances, here you go, heavily prevalent and used really fucking well. We also feature a degrading kink and a praise kink. These tend to go hand in hand. Degrading kink is where people usually get aroused by being humiliated during sexual activity, while as a praise kink is being aroused while being praised for doing things. We see it on both sides. We see the degradation with our hero literally calling her a whore and a little slut and all of these things, and at the same time saying, you're a good girl, you're doing such a good job, you're so beautiful when you're torn up and humiliated like this, it's beautiful, your submission, all of these different things. We see this in multiple different layers, degradation and the praise kink. That's also where the humiliation factor comes in under that degradation kink. We also feature what many would consider gaslighting. It's the scope that it's used, it's not supposed to be gaslighting, but a lot of people reading this will consider it gaslighting. So I wanted to give that description so you could see it, and when you read it, you can see the difference. But on a cursory glance, cursory review of it, it could definitely look like gaslighting by our hero to our heroine. And gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which one party attempts to sow self-doubt and confusion in their victim's mind. Typically, gaslighters are seeking to gain power and control over another person by distorting reality and forcing them to question their own judgment and their own intuition, which definitely does happen in this, but you understand why, because Ella does a really good job with her internal monologues of kind of steering you away from the negative side of this and seeing this other element that's going on. But on a tertiary glance, is exactly what it looks like it's going on. So I want to make you guys aware of that one. We also feature Stockholm Syndrome in this one. We're getting into the mental health representation in this installment. And Stockholm Syndrome is the psychological condition of a victim who identifies with and empathizes with their captor or abuser and their goals. And that definitely does happen. If you are not familiar based off that definition, here's a layman's term. If you ever watch Beauty and the Beast, that's Stockholm Syndrome. Belle falls in love with the Beast. He is literally her captor, and she falls in love with him. That's Stockholm Syndrome in a very base nutshell, and you see it very prevalent in this book. It's heavily displayed, and it's clearly shown. There's no question about it at all. We also feature non-con or sexual assault. Non-con is obviously non-consent. There is no consent given for the sexual practice that was happening between the two parties. One party did not consent and the other one decided to do what they fucking wanted. So yes, there is non-consent in this book. We also feature coerced consent. Coerced consent is a little different. It is the act of using pressure, alcohol, or drugs, or force to have a sexual contact with someone against his or her will. It includes persistent attempts to have sexual contact with someone who's already refused. We see this very heavily in the beginning of the book, and then it turns into and morphs once the romance really starts to bud and flourish into dubious consent, which is a word that was coined by the fan fiction community to make visible the gray areas between rape and consent. Very often shown in BDSM romances or captor-captive romances. It's a very common trope for it, but I did want to bring it to your attention that you will see it. Okay, so there's all my definitions, guys. Okay, class is at a session. Let's get in to the book. Yes, here's a summary. So we follow Astrid. Astrid is a pianist who is almost ready to graduate from the conservatory, and she has some decisions that need to be made, and she is having difficulty making these decisions. But one thing she knows is that she wants to perform at this opera house, and to get a seat for this opera house, she needs to impress a certain individual at this musical festival. So before she makes any grandiose decisions about her future life, she wants to see what happens here. And she goes out and she performs the number of her life. She gives it everything she's got. And during her bow, she locks eyes with the person that she needs to convince. And in her mind, she's saying, pick me, you need to pick me. Now, this is where we meet our hero, which is Alexander Plentnev, and I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing his name wrong, so I am sorry. Russian names give me trips. I trip on them. But Alexander is a man with specific tastes. He's a billionaire, and he rules with an iron fist in his company, along with every other aspect of his life. His trigger, his kink, his erotic nature is control. That's what he wants, and that's all he cares about, is the control aspect. And when he sees Astrid looking at him with her eyes, in her mind saying, pick me, he sees a girl who is lost, and he knows exactly what she needs. She needs a golden cage and a man to tell her what to do. And he will not settle for anything less than her in a golden cage and complete and total submission. And that's where our story kicks off. This thing was a fucking ride and a half. Okay, so before I get into what worked and what didn't work, I need to preface this with my own personal statement. In my life, BDSM is nothing more than a toy. It is something that goes in the bedside table and you pull it out every once in a while when you want to have some fun, and then it gets put away. And then that dynamic that was created within the bedroom when it was out goes away. When I walk out my bedroom door, that dynamic no longer exists. In my household, me and my husband are like this. When he is more dom, I am sub. When I am more dom, he is sub. And if We balance that shit out. And if we're not balanced, we sit down and have a fucking conversation. That is how my life is. That's what works for me. My personality traits are very dominant orientated. So there were many points in this book that were difficult for me to get through because of who I am as a person and what my lifestyle is. So I do need to preface, when I talk about what worked and what didn't work, please understand that I am seeing this through a more dominant perspective. And this whole story is pretty much told from the submissive perspective of Astrid. Okay? It is told primarily from her point of view. And that is a point of view that I am not used to. But it is a point of view that I am getting used to after reading so many of Ella Jacobs' books. It is a point of view that she writes exquisitely and so fucking well that I can get through these. But there were parts in this book that were very, very difficult. And so I need to preface that when I tell you what I think worked and what didn't work, it is based off of who I am as a person, of what I think worked and what didn't work. So, what worked in his cage? For starters, Ella's writing. This woman's intensity is so crazy fucking good. So crazy good. It is raw. It is emotionally filled. It's emotionally driven. It's an internalization of so many complex feelings and emotions that she writes so well that you know exactly what this character is feeling, even if you don't agree with it. I want to specify that if you don't agree with some of the stuff that's in this book, because I didn't, I still got the emotional rawness and brutality that my characters were going through because of the intensity and the way this woman writes. She has a way with words that will draw you in and squeeze every little bitty fucking molecule, ounce of emotion that you have, whether it's anger, whether it's pain, whether it's fear, whether it's arousal, whether it's happy, whether it's sad, whatever fucking emotion you want to call, she will pull it out and wring it within an inch of its life and then just slowly give it back to you. And it is so intense. It is so insanely well done. Everything that worked in this book excelled because of her writing. That is why I'm mentioning it first out of everything, because everything else, what I'm going to talk about, they all worked. It's fantastic, but it's only fantastic because of the way this woman wrote it. Because she has a gift with this raw, unfiltered, unbiased, just nitty gritty, in your face, just I'm going to eviscerate you. And I'm going to make you feel everything. You are going to feel what my character feels. And if you're not feeling exactly what she's feeling, you are going to be feeling something. And it was amazing. Amazing. There is... Actually, I will get to it. But understand that her writing is the reason that this book works as well as it does. I don't know another author that could handle this subject material and write it as intense as she did and allow me to get through it. I have read a lot of the subject material in this book in other books, and it did not faze me the way hers did. It did not viscerally affect me. It did not make me want to put it down and walk the fuck away, but at the same time know I would feel like shit if I did. Because I needed to go through it. I needed to push myself through it. I needed to crawl on my hands and knees, on my stomach, whatever I fucking needed to do to get through this, because it was that emotionally charged of a book, and I needed to know she brought that out in me. I was tingling for pretty much most of this fucking book, on edge of my seat. Either I was angry, sad, pissed off, happy, whatever. I was feeling something this entirety of this book because of the way this woman writes and this intensity that she writes. It was amazing. It's also the reason it took me as long as it did get through it. Because I was not expecting that level. Her other books, intense. This one, next fucking level intensity. exponentially better than everything I've read from her on her intensity scale. It was fucking beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous. Another thing that worked in the story that her writing did lend to was the progression of the story. With her intensity, she displays the ups and downs of this emotional trust bond that Astrid and Alexander have to form and build. And it's not really a easy thing to build when the guy fucking kidnapped you and basically is a sadist and wants nothing but complete and total control, and that's what he wants, and that's all he'll settle for. So this up and down emotional turmoil that she's putting our heroine through, the way she shows these up and downs, the time she decides to go up is just enough, and then she crashes, and then it goes back up. It was so well done. It was just like the perfect roller coaster of emotion. It was the perfect amount. You weren't too high for so long that you started getting complacent and comfortable. You just felt on the edge of, finally released. Nope, fuck you. Here we go. And we're gonna do something crazy. And what the fuck did you just do to her? Did you actually ask her to do that? Did you write that? What happened to you as a child? Did you actually wrote that? Holy shit. Oh my God. And then your whole psyche is plummeted down and you're just a puddle of fucking goo because you have no idea what the fuck to do with yourself at this point. The progression of the story, the way she organized the story was on fucking point. It kept you on the edge of your seat. It kept you engaged. It kept you moving. It kept you feeling at all times. And this intensity never fucking quit. It never quit. This progression allowed this Stockholm syndrome that I mentioned earlier to really be shown very clear as it progresses. It's not just something that happens. You really see the building blocks of this Stockholm being built. So when the big culminating ending moment happens, it makes total fucking sense. Even if you don't agree with it, it makes sense for the characters that she has created because of all of these ups and downs she's created. It showed that building of that Stockholm syndrome and the psyche of Astrid and how it's working in her head. It makes total fucking sense. Holy shit, it was great. Oh my God, so well done, so well done. Her internal monologues for Astrid. What the fuck? Are you shitting me right now? Are you shitting me? Okay, so like I said, am a pretty dominant person. I don't understand the mindset of a submissive person very, very well because it's not my normal area of being. So a lot of these inner monologues were really fucking uncomfortable and I was on my edge of my seat and I was awkward feeling. But oh my God, the feelings I felt during this, I felt with Astrid so freaking much. Just this, in the beginning, this fight or flight. Do I play along? To save myself? Do I try to escape? Do I just enjoy the scenery? What the fuck do I do? All these inner turmoil, back and forth shit that she went through was phenomenal. And it just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where you really start to see this subspace that she's in, and it's breaking down into something far grander and far more complex than just a subspace. We're talking a full mental reboot of something else, a permanent subspace almost, not just a temporary. This is a permanent rebuilding of her mindset, and you are seeing it step by step by step through this woman's inner monologues, and it's just crazy to watch the fight go to rationalization, to go to even more rationalization of why do I like what he's doing to me? I should not want to be in a cage, but I feel safe here. You see this slow, gradual growing, and it's so well done because, again, the intensity is right there the entire fucking time in your face. She never lets the shit up. And it's just amazing. The inner monologues of Astrid really make her character what she is, more than the actual physical scenes in the book. It is what is going on in this woman's head that is propelling the story forward. And this emotional, raw just, I'm going to expose every fucking molecule in you, and you are going to take it and you're going to like it kind of mentality that Jacobs has with her characters. And it's just, oh my God, just amazing, amazingly well done. Yes, I was uncomfortable, but I wanted to propel myself through this. I wanted to push myself through this because I wanted to know what was on the other side. I wanted to know if it worked out because it was so compelling, because the feelings I was feeling, although I did not like the way I was feeling something. I was emotionally in this book. I was invested in this for some type of emotion. And that's extremely important to me, to feel things that I'm reading, because it's one of the best parts of reading about it. And sometimes you don't always feel the good things. And the fact that this author made me feel what our character was feeling through her inner monologues and follow her progression as well and as close as I possibly could get was fantastic. Was absolutely exquisitely done. The BDSM demonstration scenes, when we do actually get some of the BDSM technique scenes being shown, she does such an exquisite job. Okay, so every single book I've read of hers is BDSM related, and it's usually some kind of lifestyle component. But when she does bring in the super sexy fun time scenes, and these are not super sexy fun time scenes, these are like training sessions, okay? That's it. We're not really talking about super sexy fun times. We're talking about like training sessions. She still writes it with so much tact and so much grace that I felt okay, that I felt like I was in good hands, that I wasn't being led astray by some psycho. This woman knows this material, knows this lifestyle. She has done her research. She knows the in and outs. She understands what all of these actions mean and what all of these things stand for and what they actually portray. And you see all of that research, all of that knowledge, all of her life in these stories, and especially in this one. So we have some definite scenes that we definitely see the beauty of the BDSM lifestyle, and we also see the beastly side of it at the same mirrored time. And again, the intensity just on both sides. I don't know how this woman wrote a beautiful BDSM scene while also showing me how fucking scary and scarring and fucking unnerving it can be, but she did it multiple times. She did it with whipping scenes where we see the carnality and the brutality and the welts and the blood and just the pain that our character is going through, that she's receiving. We see the physical exhaustion. We feel the physical exhaustion. I mean, after one of those scenes, I was sweating and I was done and I needed a fucking break and I needed to go take a nap because I was physically exhausted. I did not feel any of it, but I felt the exhaustion and the weight of every single hit in that book that I got to read. Just the way she wrote this book and the intensity she wrote with it. But during those scenes, I also felt the cleansing that Astrid was going through, the clearing of her mind, the only focusing on the here and now and focusing on this piece of pain that she was given, and then moving on and breathing and then bringing back for the compassion and the aftercare that Alexander was giving her. This back and forth. Beauty and the Beast saw it both. I saw that in the caging with the safety of being in the cage and how it turned into a safe place for her and giving her peace of mind. But at the same time, it was still an ugly, disgusting box that reminded her of what was taken and how that fear and ugly morphed into something beautiful and captivating and wanted and desired and needed. That morphing was just astounding throughout this book. Thank you. Throughout this book. There are some scenes where Alexander takes his liberty since she is his possession, and he shares her because he doesn't mind sharing his toys as long as they're careful with them and they take care of them while he's sharing them. And I saw the cathartic release through Astrid, but at the same time saw that the realization that her master could not give her something that she freaking needed. And because he was not willing to sacrifice the control that he needed to survive. So he found the happy medium and shared her with others, but was right there the entire time. This brutality, this humiliation, this segregation during these scenes of just being literally a walking fuck doll, at the same time being his most prized possession and saying, I'm right here, they're not gonna hurt you. And in a few scenes where they do, seeing the aftermath of that and his reaction and how he fixed it and tried to remedy it. You saw this full circle of you're mine, but I'm going to share you, but I will always be there to protect you kind of moment. And it was difficult, but it was awesome at the same time. Straight up. The pet play components. You see this idea of true possession in him. There are scenes that were really hard in regards to this component. There are times where, as the reader, as I, being who I am, and reading this, and it's literally like she is a dog. She is not a human at all. Tattoos, chips, and everything, and pedigree papers. Yeah, it was, the lack of humanity in some of these scenes was just crazy. But then when you find out why he treats her like that, because his dogs are his most prized possession. Those are the things he takes care of the most. And now knowing that she is the same level as his prized possessions, it all kind of makes sense in a weird, twisted kind of way. And you see this beauty in it, and you're just like, I am not supposed to appreciate this. I'm not supposed to like this. I'm not supposed to be okay with this, but for these characters, I guess it works. She did so well of showing the beautiful side of all these BDSM techniques, and yet the dark side too. This beastly element that a lot of people see. And I will be honest that that's the first thing I saw. And it took me the entire of the book to really see the beauty because of who I am. But I saw it because the way she wrote it. She wrote it with such understanding and such care that I was able to see both sides so well and choose kind of the side that I appreciated the most. I loved her parallel scenes. There is one scene, there are some musical scenes, and music has seemed to be like a common thread within her books, and I really do appreciate that because I can understand getting lost in music and feeling myself through music. I can understand that kind of euphoric thing more than I can physical subspace. But these music scenes are always done well. Whenever she had Astrid playing the piano, just, I wanted to be there and hear it. She does the grandiose musical Lost in the Cosmos so fucking well. It is literally a niche that she has mastered so soon. It's phenomenal. I loved it. But I loved how she paralleled her coming to accept this situation that she has been forced into, and how she's accepting it slowly but surely. And as she's doing that, her playing becomes more soulful and less mechanical. Before, her life was a series of decisions left to be made. What am I going to do with my life when I leave? If I don't make this concert, am I going to go back home with my parents who I don't want to be with? Am I going to struggle for money here? What am I going to get a teaching job here? What am I going to do? When she got kidnapped, it was a fight. What do I do to get out? How do I protect myself? How do I save myself? How do I preserve who I am? And as she accepts this situation that she's been placed in, her music starts to become less mechanical. So as her life becomes more narrowed and focused and less decision driven and more just command following, her music becomes broader and growing and expanding and more soulful, and she takes the situation and puts it into the music, and it just goes exponentially. It was so fucking cool. I was so cool at that moment. Just talking about it makes me so happy because it was such a beautiful moment in the story. It really was. I love that moment. It was so well done, and it was so eye-opening, and it was a moment in the story where I started to let go of all my preconceived notions of what I thought was right, and just accepted the story for what it was. And it was such a great moment. I'm so glad that Ella included this musical layer for those of us who don't understand this lifestyle, who aren't part of it, who cannot appreciate some of the nuances and the multi-layers that are there. She allows us just a brief opening of a bigger window for us to see into it with these musical components, and she does it so fucking well. It was so well done. I loved it. There was a drugging scene. When she's kidnapped, she is drugged, and it's mentioned that he was not expecting her to take as well to the drug as she did. It took longer to work out of her system. She held it in longer, this numbing agent. And this parallel to when she has this severe whipping scene and he just cannot get her to get out of her head and just focus on what he's doing. This cleansing period, and just over and over and over again. And he's shocked by how much she can take. And having that parallel, it's amazing that she holds in this numbing sensation as long as she possibly can to not feel anything. And then by the end of the book, she is holding on so she can feel everything for as long as she possibly humanly can take it. This constant moment of narrowing and growing with all these different parallel scenes that Ella Jacobs has put in there is just fantastic for us readers who need something else to understand the severity and the level of intensity of some of these BDSM world lifestyle scenes that she has created in this novel. These are huge bones to us to really see and understand the beauty of some of these scenes and to not hold outside opinions on them. And it was phenomenally well done. I cannot get enough of some of those scenes there, and there's a lot of them. And the very big one is the very end, so I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's a huge one that any girl that is ever needed to start over and reinvent herself has done will understand, and clear as day completely get the symbolism of that moment. And it is fucking stellar. Oh my God, it's stellar. It's not a big moment, but to a lot of females, it will be. And it was just fucking perfect. I loved it. Another thing that worked in this book was the aftercare. In BDSM, from what I know and from people that I know that are in this lifestyle that I've talked to in my own research, aftercare is a major element in this. It's not just about setting up the scene and the consent with your partner and understanding your boundaries and your safe words, which, by the way, heads up, there's no safe word in this book. Just a heads up, no safe wording here. None. Okay? None. So I'm going to throw that out there. But the aftercare element that is part of the BDSM lifestyle, this moment where the Dom is helping you come out of subspace and caring for you, the physical marks from your sessions, the emotional draining from your sessions, the mental turmoil. The aftercare was there for every single fucking scene, whether it was an actual BDSM scene with whips, chains, whether it was a sexualized scene, whether it was a sharing scene, whether it was just a matter of feeding her through a fucking cage and making sure she understood her place. It was there. Alexander had the fucking aftercare on goddamn point. Holy shit, this guy did not miss a beat for his aftercare. At the fuck all. I will give this man that this was the area he truly, truly excelled in. Because he was there every single time. There was not a single scene that he misses. Not a single one. And I love that. I fucking love that. I loved how it was so clearly shown and laid out and made the reader know that this is a huge fucking element to this story. Because it's in these aftercare elements, it's in these aftercare moments that you really start to see the romance between these two start to build and grow. It is not during the sex scenes. It's not during the sharing scenes. It's not during the piano scenes. It is during these aftercare scenes where you see his walls and her walls mutually come down and they meet in a happy medium. And that's where you start to see these little blooms of this very dark and twisted and intense dynamic relationship start. And it is stunning. And I'm so, so glad that they were in there and he did not miss a single one. We never saw a huge sub drop, which would break my heart. We never see one. And I really, really appreciated that immensely. Now, that is what really stood out to me that worked. And again, all of these worked because of Ella's writing, because of the way she writes and her intense knowledge and understanding of this material, and her fearlessness to write it down the way she does. That is a huge, huge deal for why all of these things work. But there are some things that intense writing and knowledge just can't help. So there are a few things I did find that I didn't think worked. And I want to preface this. This is what I think didn't work because of who I am as a person. Because these are things that I just, no matter how much I wanted to get past, I couldn't. And so I want to make it clear that this is me. So anybody who's watching this video that is like me might go into this book knowing that these are things that you might not like, but everything is handled with tact and care, and Ella does a fantastic job with all of these. But her intensity really makes these things amazing, but it also makes them extremely, extremely difficult for someone like me or anybody like me who is a very dominant personality to read, because it's so hard to break away from that. So this is where that intense, exquisite writing she has just isn't enough to get me past that. So the first one is, there is Alexander's trajectory. The way he starts out, he stays consistent the entirety of this book. He is an iron-fisted control freak. Straight up, there's no denying it. Start to finish. And I feel like if this book had been longer, I would have gotten to see him, I would have hoped to see him soften just a little bit, because you never see him soften. Even in those aftercare scenes, he is still 100% in control. Yes, his walls are coming down and he's saying, shh, good girl, you did such a good job. I'm here. I'm never going anywhere. You hear the tone change to soft, but the firmness of him never goes away. It never stops. It's constant, 100%. And I feel like if this book would have been longer, I would have hoped to see just a little bit softening. More of a confirmation of emotional feelings other than just physical. There is a line that's said at the end of the book, and although he doesn't respond to it verbally, there is a physical response. But it would have been so nice to see him shed that little layer because of everything that she shed, and just give her that one statement. It would have been the cherry on the top, and it would have made me fall for Alexander a little bit, because I never could quite fall for him. I could never quite get behind him. In the beginning, essentially, he's not the villain. He is our male hero. He's technically our hero. But she wrote him as a villain so well that I couldn't see him any other way. I saw a blooming of romance during their aftercare elements, but mostly on the side of Astrid. I couldn't ever see him past the iron-fisted control dominant male that he was. I could never see past it. And I wanted to. I wanted to so freaking bad, but I couldn't, because I didn't get enough time with him on the other side of the, lack of a better word, third act breakup. I kind of wish there would have been more to the story so I could have seen him more on the other side of this and see where he might have gone. Maybe even an epilogue. And I'm not even a huge fan of epilogues. I wouldn't even mind an epilogue on that, just to see a little bit more, to see if maybe Astrid's submission since it was something he wanted so badly, and she gave it finally, freely, everything, if that would have softened his heart just a little bit more. And I feel a little missed that I didn't see that. Just a little bit. And then there is the scene that broke me in this book. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. I cried during this book. And they were not happy tears. They were tears of pity and hopelessness and kind of loss. There's a major scene where a collaring ceremony happens, but it's not really a ceremony. It's more of kind of like an assault, actually. And there's a moment where Astrid is on her knees, and the fight that she just gave, the fight of her life to try to stop everything that just happened to her. And it's a lot. It's a lot, people. It's not just like one fucking instance. It's like bam, 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 bam. It is this realization moment where she realizes that she actually is never getting out. That this situation is her future, and she is not a person anymore. She is a possession. It is this moment that she really comes to realize this. And she's kneeling, and he gives her a collar. And he puts it on her, and she rests her head against his thigh. He puts his hand on her head. And instead of making this beautiful moment, he's preening like a goddamn peacock. And in that moment, I lost my fucking shit. I lost it. Because I was so upset that she lost the fight. That was the hardest moment in this book for me as a person to read. Because she fought so hard. And it was the lack of it was the fact that she lacked humanity anymore. That in his eyes, she wasn't a human. She was a thing. She was a possession, prized possession, one to be treasured and taken care of, but still not a person. And I lost my fucking shit. I am not going to sit here and say I did not want to stop reading at that moment, but I knew because of the way Jacobs writes that I would be okay if I just kept going. If I just kept going and reading through it, she would take care of me. And she did. She did. I got back. And so she did. So those were the things that I personally think didn't work for who I am as a person. Anybody else reading this book might see those as beautiful moments, but for me, they were painful and hard and really fucking eye-opening. Really fucking eye-opening. But that's all I found that didn't work. And that stuff's mostly me. Which brings me to the spice rating. I gave this book 3 chili peppers. There is not a lot of sex in it, but the sex that there is, well, it's nice. We have graphic language with regards to a degradation kink and a praise kink, which I've already explained earlier, heavily used. So if you like dirty talk, if you like praise, if you like being degraded, here you fucking go, right up your alley. Graphic BDSM training and punishment scenes, the whipping scenes, they do turn sexualized after a while, and they are intense, and they are nerve-wracking, but they are done really, really well. I thoroughly enjoyed those scenes, even though it was not a concept that I personally agreed with. The way they were written was fantastic, and girl can write a sex scene, straight up, okay? Straight up, she can write one. Like I said, we also have pet play components, so that racks up the spice rating on this as well. Dubious consent and coerced consent and non-consent So you got the 3 trifecta right there, and you see all 3 of them, and you see results of all 3 of them, which is really cool to see the aftermath of the non-consent and what goes down mentally, physically, and emotionally with all of our characters, not just the one who experienced it. Also, the coerced consent scene where it's not as provocative or as mind-blowing as you think it would be, but it's still intense and in your face and just really fucking well done. Really fucking well done. Which brings me to my final thoughts. I gave this book 4 stars because of Ella's writing. Everything in this book, even if I didn't agree with it, was handled with tact and grace and an intensity that I don't know anybody else that can match it. I have not read someone else who can match it the way she does it. And it was phenomenal the way it was. This level of intensity is levels above her other works. So if you have read her other works, which I will link the playlist of the reviews for her other works here for you. This is the Not Yours to Keep trilogy. Not Yours to Keep and If I Were Yours are currently out for purchase. You can go purchase them and the reviews are linked here. If you have read those books and you're on the fence about this one, don't be. She levels everything fucking up. Everything up. If the intensity was too much in those books, this one is not. You are not prepared for this one unless you take some, maybe, have some alcohol or, some charged friends. Depending on what gets your rocks off. If you're looking for a psychological mindfuck, here you go. This book will make you question your sanity and what you think is right and wrong. There are a lot of times that in this book I walked into thinking that this was not right and not okay, but the way she wrote it, I was like, well, maybe for these guys it's okay, not me, but for them, it's cool, it's kosher, it works for them. Even the scene that broke me, it still worked for those characters. It still worked for them. If you want raw, unfiltered acceptance of practices that question your own sanity, here you go. A lot of them. Lots of them. And there is no shyness about it. They are right there in your face. And I love that she's that fucking gutsy of an author. I think that's just fucking baller and awesome and just fucking badass. I love it. If you're looking for a BDSM with a typical cliche happy ending, this is not for you. This is not for you. If you're looking, you like your BDSM to be dark and twisty and then have the ending be nice and fluffy, yeah, this is not your book at all. This HEA is hard won, and it's only an HEA in the eyes of people who can really appreciate this kind of relationship. I see the HEA, but I know someone who's in this lifestyle, who practices this, who enjoys this, will appreciate this HEA and see it for the beautiful thing that it is far more than I will. I know they will. But this is a hard won HEA. It does not easily come by, and you're exhausted after it. You are exhausted. Okay? If you are looking for a writer who can capture your mind and not let go until she's had her fill with you, Ella Jacobs is that author. She will drag you in, eviscerate you, put you back together again, and all of a sudden you're seeing things in a whole different light. And you're okay with it because you know as long as it's her, it's going to be okay. Ella writes the submissive perspective so fucking well. So fucking well. But she is a dominant in her own right when it comes to her books. She tells you what to feel. She shows you the images she wants you to see. And she is so captivating with her words and so narrowed a vision that you feel like there's nothing else around you. when you read her works. This one exponentially demonstrates that. She might write the submissive voice perfectly, but when it comes to the readers, you're the submissive, and she's your dom, and she's going to tell you how you're going to feel. And if you fight it, it's going to hurt, but at the end, you're going to feel fucking great. And if you accept it, you're going to see this beautiful story that someone like me had to fight to see. So, which brings me to my author. Ella, thank you so much for this story, and thank you for including me on your ARC team again and trusting me with your stories. I have read and reviewed every single one of your books, and I hope that I get to do the rest of them. This is a full circle moment for me. You're one of the first authors that ever took a chance on me to review their book, and you knocked my socks off with this one. You did. You sucked me in and made me feel things that I shouldn't feel for things that I thought were wrong. You made me cry. You made me feel fucking uncomfortable. And you broke me. And I don't have to put down a lot of books and walk away. And I almost had to do this with this one. I almost had to. So thank you for giving me that feeling that I needed, that I look for and count on in your books. Thank you for that. Thank you for this story. This was, holy shit. This was awesome. And I cannot wait to see what you do with the next installment. I know it's not going to be coming out anytime soon. I read your author's note, but I'm really, really excited, and I will take that pain any day, especially from you. Thank you. That's my review of Ella Jacobs in His Cage. If you like to find this, you can find this on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. It is currently out. Go pick it up. You will not regret it. You might be in a little pain, but you won't regret it. Love you guys.